Okay, so let me share my screen. What if I don't want?
I have a quick question. I'm sorry, before we start.
Yes, please, please.
Do I need to take notes, since will this also be sent to us? The slides? Okay, great.
Yes, it will be. Yeah, Adrienne is always kind. She sends it to everyone.
It really makes a difference, because then you can really pay attention to what you're saying instead of trying to write it down.
Oh, thank you. And my slides intentionally have a lot of words, because my intention is like, if you can use them later. So I don't want to kind of like have just slides that are only for teaching. It's kind of like for the reference later, and I hope it helps. But thanks for your feedback. There is one. Okay, thanks, Adrienne. All right. So tonight we are going to talk about emotional awareness, something that all of us humans, some of, or probably perhaps all the, I don't want to say all the creatures, but all the animals also have in common, including us. But we definitely, as human beings, we definitely have a lot more complex emotions, and the modern life brings even another layer of complexity to it. So let's just explore together, because it's something that we all have, and we want to know what we want to do with it, right? Why doesn't it go? Oh, okay. Okay. So if you have attended our last year workshop, I just updated a little bit this one. There are a little bit different, like differences, changes. I decided to start with the definition of emotion, and then what emotions are, what we want to do with them. We still have a few examples of unpleasant and pleasant emotions that we go through, and we review Carla McLaren and Brené Brown's definition based on their books, which I highly recommend both of them. And then we get to love. We all have probably experienced it in one way or another, whether it's, a romantic love, or parental love, or love for our pet, or for our society, for our country, for everybody else. We all have that also in our heart, and some people go as far as love is the answer. We do talk about mix of emotions, group of emotions, and then how we want to actually feel it in our body, the sensations of emotions in our body. And then we want to talk about the regulation of emotions and what it means, what does it mean when we say we want to be more mature emotionally. And then I have a few practices to suggestions that can hopefully can give you some ideas about the way that you can tailor it in your own life. So the definition of emotion, I chose both Carla McLaren and Lisa Barrett's. They are both researchers. Carla McLaren is a therapist. Lisa Barrett is a psychologist. They have been working on emotion scientifically for over 20 years. I respect them a lot. I disagree in some points, but I definitely have a huge reference of both of them, plus Brené Brown in this slide deck, in this workshop. I'm going to quickly read it, and then I want to explain it a little bit. So Carla McLaren says, an emotion is a psychological experience or a state of awareness that gives you information about the world, and a feeling, is your conscious, and the feeling is your conscious awareness of the emotion itself. So the difference between emotion and feelings. And then Lisa Barrett says, an emotion is your brain's creation of what your bodily sensations mean in relation to what is going on around you in the world. In every waking moment, your brain uses past experience organized as concepts to guide your actions and give your sensations meaning. Perhaps we need to kind of like read them a few times, and even Lisa Barrett also has a very good book. The sources are all at the end of this slide deck. I think Carla McLaren is The Language of Emotions, and Lisa Barrett is book is How Emotions Are Made. So when you look at these definitions that different professionals have about emotion, you see one common thing. It's very physiological, which means our body absorbs the news, the messages from the environment, and then based on the experience that we have had from the beginning of our life, the moment we were born, then it translates those messages to different types of emotions and bodily sensations. For example, and it's very different for everybody. A very little example is like, I see that in daycare, they are teaching my granddaughter, they are bringing little snakes in the daycare, and they just play with it. Not definitely harmless snakes, but she's 3, so she is growing up with not being scared of snake. But if you bring a little snake from like 10 kilometers away, I will scream and run away. So we have, based on our experience, our body reacts to the messages that we get from the environment and creates different emotions. Does that make sense? Is there anything that come to your mind? Is there anything you would like to share about emotions? What do you think emotions are? If you like to unmute yourself or type it in the chat.
Yeah, I'd say that I like the definition. I would also add that for me, like, emotions like are very, I consider myself pretty emotional, in fact, probably too much sometimes. Anyway, like I'd say that emotions are tied to our brain so deeply. It's a very mental connection. So while we display it visually and maybe on our faces and eyes and stuff like that, like I think, like, if the person has a deep emotion, even if it's a memory, like you might be thinking it and like start smiling or frowning depending on what it was, like, just because you're thinking of that memory. And so I really think that it just ties us to memories, ties us to in the present moment. And like I feel like that's sort of kind of what separates us from other animals. I mean, not that animals like cats and dogs and everything don't have emotions. I'm not saying that, but like I think like it separates humans because we can connect, we can think at a higher level usually, and connect with our inner side and our inner emotions more than most species can.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. Yeah. Anybody else likes to bring any thoughts? Well, as we go, I will ask more, and I hope that there is more contribution. I appreciate it. So let's see what we want to. I don't know why it's not working. So emotions. this is actually becoming stressful for me. Why it's not? Okay, I don't know why it's not moving easily. So, speaking of emotions, some of us, like I think Ashley was talking about, mentioning that she's an emotional person. Or, even like there are stereotypes that women are more emotional than men. So what do we really mean by saying that? Do we mean that like I have more emotions and the other person doesn't? No, we all have emotions. It's a very physiological process, and each body creates emotions. We each experience it differently. Something that rises fear in me might not be scary to you. Something that is stressful might not be stressful to another person. And overall, the frequency of expressing our emotion, some people can be very expressive, some people can be less expressive, but we all have emotions. We all experience it in just very different ways, and we can express it in very different ways. In a way, that's why people say each person has a different love language, because I might be able to express my emotions by buying a gift, but another person could express their emotions with like being very supportive, when you need them. So it's very, very different. And that also brings a lot of conflicts. But when we know our own emotions, then it's easier to ask other people what their emotions are. Something that can be on our way is trauma. If there is any trauma, any type of trauma, whether it's they call it the big T trauma, something really bad has happened in your life, whether in your childhood, developmental trauma, or even any time of your life that created a sense of helplessness. And you weren't able to process it at the moment. It could be a big T trauma, but it could be also a generational trauma. Like racism. It could be an intergenerational trauma. It could be a collective trauma. There is war in the other part of the world, but it doesn't mean that we are not impacted by it. So in a different way, we all have had traumas in our life. And what trauma does is make us feel not safe. Our nerve system, if you attended the last session, and if you weren't, I think Adrian has posted the link to the YouTube video that we talked about our nerve system. Our nerve system, especially the vagus nerve from the brain stem all the way down to our lower back and kidneys. And one of the things that the vagus nerve does is managing and controlling our mood and emotions. So when we are traumatized, and when there is unprocessed trauma in our body, which is again very physiological, it can be in so many different of our muscles, the muscle memory. I highly recommend the book, The Body Keeps the Score for that. So when our body feels unsafe because of unprocessed trauma, we kind of like wrap around ourselves. We cannot connect very easily with others. Looking for the cues of safety becomes a little bit more work. So in that way, not only we don't feel our own emotion, there is not also an easy way to understand other people's emotions. So we have to be very careful if we are traumatized, we want to process. I mean, the very first thing is for our own sake, we want to have help and process our traumas. And then also in order to connect to other people in a deeper way. So in overall, when there is a stressor in the environment, our body gets the message through the interoception system, and it sends it to our nerve system, and our nerve system goes to the brain, and the brain is like, last 5 times, this was very dangerous, so I have to be scared. But the good news is, because of this process, when I start desensitizing myself to things that are fearful to me, that they are scary to me, then I can create a different algorithm in my brain that says, well, last 5 times was scary, but last 1 time or last 2 times, it wasn't as scary. So maybe I can lower the bar of the fear for this. So it's how we teach ourselves based on the present moment experience. And that's why that feeling the pleasant experience, pleasant emotions are very helpful in order to change this algorithm in our brain. But what you might feel like, well, we have fear, anxiety, anger, jealousy, envy, grief, sadness, depression, so many bad and unpleasant emotions. But we also have like happiness, joy, contentment, and maybe just a couple more of pleasant emotions. And why is that? So basically, our bodies, through the evolution, has evolved towards looking for the cues of danger. And it's always because of the survival instinct that we have. That's always the first. When we feel that we are safe, then we can go towards pleasant emotions. So our body needs to feel safe first. That's why that our body constantly looks for unpleasant emotions to make sure that we can survive, because that's part of the evolution. I hope that makes sense. It was very interesting for me when I learned that. So that, I hope that answers a little bit about why we experience more unpleasant emotions and why do they stay with us for a longer time. It's like when we feel sad, when we feel anxiety, if we don't actively try to ground ourselves or soothe ourselves or do something about it, it takes a long time for it to go away. But when we feel joy, that's it, like 1 minute and then it's gone. That's why that there are a lot of recommendations from psychologists today that when we feel a pleasant emotion, can we just sit with it, even close our eyes just to absorb it for a few minutes, allow our neurons to absorb it, to create new neuron paths that I deserve this pleasant emotion, this pleasant feeling. And that takes us to self-compassion. None of this would happen if we don't have self-compassion. The very first step is, I want to understand myself. I want to understand my emotions so I can be kind to myself and kind to others. So that's basically the basic of it. Now, anybody like to share anything that can come to your mind, any thoughts, any questions? So Ashley shares, I've heard that women are more emotional, but I'm not so sure that's so true. It just maybe women are more expressive, exactly, of their emotion. I feel differently that I'm emotional. I've been told I wear my heart on my sleeves, and that's perfectly fine. That's perfectly great to know that, you know, I have these emotions and I'm very expressive. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that. When we suppress our emotions or when we cannot manage our emotions, that's when we want to get to kind of like a solution that, like, okay, if I'm like reacting instead of responding, or if I'm completely suppressing my emotions, what do I want to do with it? I think I saw Beverly raising her hand, please.
Hi.
Hi. Oh, we can't hear you.
I've discovered that.
Your voice is
Can
breaking
you hear
up.
me?
Can you talk a
Oh,
little
let me
bit?
see. Okay, I'm just adjusting this. Can you hear me now, or is it still
Yes,
breaking up?
perfect. Yes, perfect.
Yeah, that's better.
Okay, so okay, good. So I'm Bevy. I'm calling from California, and I really like this presentation
Thank you.
because at the beginning of the pandemic, I started to meditate and I started to journal, and I started to keep a gratitude journal. Now, I had attended meditation classes before, and I had journaled, but just writing. And the reason I'm mentioning this is you mentioned that when we feel our emotions, there's a time when sometimes we're reactive rather than responsive, we react rather than respond. And I realized that one of the things that was hard for me early on would say, you know, what do you feel in your body? And I'd say, I feel nothing. And now I realize that when I am tense, I'm sorry if I'm screaming, when I am tense, my toes literally curl up, they curl under.
Yes.
And also my voice gets really high, which sometimes people think I'm angry, but then I'm not regulated. I also noticed that I would get this really, really painful pain behind the sort of redundant behind my ear. Now, I was doing those things before, and I realize now I've been doing grounding exercises, and sometimes things that don't upset other people, even positive things. Like I went to visit my cousin recently, and I had to pack. Packing for me is very anxiety producing. Getting on a train, I live in California, so getting on a train, and she lives really far away now, getting on a train, all that was very anxiety provoking for me, even though it was something happy. And she kept saying, why are you anxious? Why are you anxious? And I had to actually plan things. So I like this because I'm much more aware of my emotions. I'm much more aware of how to manage them and how to honor them, you know. And so anyway, thank you so much. I really, really like this workshop. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, this is beautiful what you share. You know, we mentioned a little bit about how, like, the sensations of the body, and then we talked about it last month, and we will talk about it in the next workshop too. I appreciate you mentioning, actually, these are great examples, you know, like curling your toes or beyond the ear. A lot of people feel it on the shoulder area, on your neck. A lot of people feel it in the chest or in our gut, our stomach. Or like, I think I personally, my own coach actually noticed that, like I start rubbing my hands or kind of like moving my hands a lot. So there are so many different things that our body as a message tells us that, like, this is a stressful situation, and packing is definitely one of those. And we will talk about mixed emotions. When you were packing and you had anxiety, it doesn't mean that you weren't happy. Us human, like we talked about, we're complex, and we can have so many different emotions feeling at the same time. So I appreciate when you bring these examples, these personal examples. This really helped. Thank you. Now I have to figure out how to go to the next page. Anybody else likes to share? Okay, so there are just some, I chose a few different, a few emotions to share tonight, but as I said, I highly recommend if you have a chance to read Brené Brown's book, The Atlas of the Heart, and Carla McLaren, The Language of Emotions. Lisa Barrett's book is a little bit more scientific to the scientific side. If you feel like it might be boring, but the other ones are a lot easier to read. But they're all available. And Lisa Barrett's book is How Emotions Are Made. Even if you don't have time to read these books, if you just YouTube the name of these people, you will find like an hour interviews with them that can shed a lot of light. Now, another thing that I'm comparing these two people at this moment, because of the lack of time, I only brought two different people's definition for each emotion. It's because everybody can have her or his own definition for that emotion. I understand that scientists are trying to find a unique definition for each one of these feelings, but at the same time, it's very personalized. So I want to compare it to see how two different people who have researched on it can see it differently, or can see only one part of it, and the other one sees the other part of it, and then bring your own definition to it. What is fear for you? So this is kind of like a practice, even if you like to do after the session, that like, what does fear mean for me? And what is the spectrum of fear for me? There is absolutely no black and white. Each one of these emotions has a spectrum. So let's see what they say. Fear, Carla McLaren says, fear arises to let me know about changes in my environment. And Brené Brown says, fear is a negative, short-lasting, high-alert emotion in response to a perceived threat. You see, in a way, they are saying the same thing, but each one of them is looking at it from a different lens. So if we put them all together, maybe it becomes comprehensive, but not just two people. We need your definition, everybody's definition, to bring the wholeness to it. So it's very important if you spend some time and define, especially these major emotions, because there are a lot of sub-emotions. Well, what is really fear for me? Is fear, like Brené Brown says, it's a short lasting because it really quickly turns to anxiety. However, what about people who are living in a combat? They are living in a constant state of fear. So it's short-lived, but overall, it's a constant fear. So it's, very different circumstances, very different situations, different perceptions that we have, the uniqueness of each person. I really, I want to invite you, I wanted to say suggest, but I really want to invite you to see what it means for you. Now, for anxiety helps me prepare for the future and get things done. That's the healthy anxiety that Carla McLaren is talking about. And then Brené Brown has the American Psychological Association definition that says an emotion characterized by feelings of tension, worried thoughts, and physical changes like increased blood pressure. So yeah, that's a very good example of like increased blood pressure. A lot of time when we, like even if we take our blood pressure at home, it might be looking good, but then we get to the doctor's appointment and it goes high just because of the anxiety of being in a doctor's appointment. So different situations, but the examples that Debbie was bringing, when we feel the anxiety, our body reacts to it very differently. I love the example that you mentioned, like my voice raises, the volume of my voice raises very differently. Like my friend just texted me that her mom was leaving for a trip, and they had problems with her luggage. And then she was so stressed that at the end, my friend didn't even get a chance to hug her mother. And that shows like how much her mother was stressed out. Doesn't mean really that like she didn't want to hug her, but it really shows that under the stress and anxiety, our behavior changes, our bodily sensations can be amplified in so many different ways. So I really like to invite everyone to see how is it for you, and like I said, there is always a spectrum. What is like, how much anxiety do I have when I'm in an airport compared to how much anxiety do I have when I'm taking my dog to the vet when he's sick, from 0 to 10. These are very different anxieties. And, there are healthy anxiety, like the one that Carla McLaren talks about. Of course, when there is a test, I have anxiety. But me personally, I have test phobia. So if there is any type of evaluation on me, I feel like cold hands. I cannot think very straightforward. If I had memorized everything, I cannot remember properly. But there are also people that feel the anxiety, get ready for the test, and then they can go and take the test. So it's very different for everybody. And something I wanted to mention, I intentionally call these unpleasant emotions. I know a lot of people talk about good and bad emotions, but I call them unpleasant and pleasant emotions because there is no bad emotion. Anything that our body has is not bad. It's there for a reason. And we talked about that. Our emotions are our messengers. There is a message in every emotion. Like they are talking about like fear, it's telling you that there is a threat. Anxiety, it's telling you that something is overwhelming for you, something is above the normal level. There is always a message in each emotion. So we have unpleasant and pleasant emotions, but there is absolutely no bad emotion. I really like this two together, jealousy and envy. We, many of us, interchangeably use these two words and to express our emotion, but they are different. Jealousy is usually about a group of at least 3 people, and there is one that feels like left out in the connection and regard of the 2 others. So the way that Carla McLaren speaks about it is jealousy helps me choose and maintain a strong and supportive relationships. Perfect, right? But then Brené Brown says, jealousy is when we fear losing a relationship or a valued part of a relationship that we already have. So we can combine them together, or we can look at and add our own definition to it. Yeah, definitely. It brings fear of losing a relationship or having a relationship impacted. But it's also how we can transform that, get the message and say, okay, what can I do in order to have a resolution for this, whatever the resolution can be. But then envy is when I envy you, it's because of what you have and I don't have. So Carla McLaren says, envy helps me gain and maintain access to resources and attention. Envy, Brene Brown says, envy occurs when we want something that another person has. I think I have had this example before. I envy people who have PhD in psychology because I never had a chance to do it. It's my passion. And even though I am studying, I'm taking a lot of other classes, but it's kind of like that degree and that position that people have, the research labs and the teaching opportunities that they have is very kind of like dream-like for me. So I envy them. But what do? I study on my own. I take different classes and I try to be a more knowledgeable coach. But I will never be a psychologist, of course, but I can gain that knowledge that I want, and I can create the way that I want to teach in a very different way. So that's how you can see these complementary together, but then what is it that you can bring to it? Any questions, any thoughts so far? Does it bring any memories that you like to share or any thoughts? All good.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Yeah, you can hear me from here?
Yes.
Awesome. This is Ashley. Yeah, I have memories when the holidays come around and people that are family and friends that have passed away, in my life. I miss them because it throws my holiday rituals different. Like a good example was my grandmother. Well, I always bought her a calendar, and it was kind of a tradition, a ritual to do that at Christmas. And we buy her annual calendar and a few other things. Obviously, when we didn't have her, when she passed, we didn't do that. Mm-hmm. So I felt like after that, Christmas was like never the same. I mean, as time goes by, I'm starting to get used to it, but I have memories of those types of things and traditions, so that creates some sort of sadness at a time that should be really happy. I mean, obviously I try to be happy and still have other family to spend time with, but it's not the same, because I would love to spend time with my grandmother and a couple other people that I was close to. I was wondering, Shabnam, though, about emotions, because you said we kind of need to like control them and not let them control us. And for me, it's kind of often the other way around, that the emotions get to me. Like, I was just wondering, you had mentioned journaling, and do you have an opinion on journaling, of how much to do it and when it's effective? Like, I'm wondering, should people journal every day, or just sort of when they have something to put down that they feel is meaningful, and all that. I mean, I used to write in a journal when growing up, but then I kind of got away from that because part of me thought it was boring, but I could get back to it possibly. I don't know how helpful that is shown.
How did you feel about it when you did it?
Well, I mean, when I was journaling in the past, it was more like partly for school, and when I did it on my own, it was like I didn't get as much out of it, because I feel like I was probably just listing things that I did during the day, today I watched TV, and and what I did there. It wasn't very detailed. I mean, I wrote in sentences, but it wasn't much. It wasn't a lot about my mental thoughts. It was more about what happened or didn't happen that I wanted to happen. So I'm wondering if maybe if I had a different approach to journaling, Um,
Yeah, there are a
is
lot
that
of
with
different
high in
approaches.
emotions? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. There are a lot of different approaches to journaling now. There's so many actually like classes and trainings about it. There are journaling
Mhm.
prompts. I am personally writing a journal prompt. Hopefully by next year I can publish it. But it depends on what we want to focus on, and that's
Mhm.
why journal prompts are very helpful, because at different times we want to focus on different things. One thing that is very now mainstream is they say journaling is like pooping, our mind pooping. So when you bring the words that are so, there are so many words, sometimes it's very overwhelming in our head. When you bring it on the paper, either you type it or write it down, there become a structure to it. And we will have a slide further tonight that talks about name it to tame it. So when we talk about our emotion, when we name our emotion, when we write how we are feeling about it, it definitely helps, kind of like brings a relief to our brain that like, oh, okay, I see it differently. Now we can use different journal prompts, depends on what we want to focus on, and that also brings another approach. Like I'm working on a journal prompt for vertical development, for adult development, and how we can become more mature. And like the journal has 3 different sections for 3 different groups of people. That's kind of like for overall growth. But there are journals that are focusing just on anxiety. There are journals out there that are just focusing on relationships, and that's also another big category. So journaling definitely helps. There's absolutely nothing I can say how often, because it's always up to you. When you feel doing it, you want to do it. And when you do it often enough, you see that it becomes a habit that your brain is like, yeah, let's just do it. I have like a lot of things on my phone just typing little by little, because it helps me to organize and structures my thoughts. It definitely helps.
Okay. That's what I thought. So thank you. And hopefully your next slide that you reference will, for this.
Hopefully, yeah. And we are on the slide that you talked about sadness, about your grandmother. You talked about grief, which is really part of human life. There is absolutely no human that doesn't feel sadness. It's a very important part of our life. And it's also a very valuable part of our life. I really like both definitions that they have. Carla McLaren says, sadness helps me let go of things that are no longer working. Sadness helps me make room for things that will work. And then Brené Brown says, feeling sad is a normal response to loss or defeat, or even the perception of loss or defeat. And she says, to be human is to know sadness. There is sadness is unpleasant, but it's definitely very valuable. One of the most valuable emotions that we have. And when we feel the sadness, if we let it be there, if we don't suppress it, if we don't push it under the rug, distract ourselves with other things, if we don't distract ourselves, we definitely gain a huge maturity out of it. A very big growth usually comes out of it. And grief, of course, Ashley just mentioned, it's a very important, long processing emotion. Grief is something that you really want to be patient with yourself. You don't want to push it. You don't want to become impatient with yourself. That why am I still grieving for this loss? Everybody grieves differently. Everybody has different timing, and grief goes up and comes back down. It's just very different for each person. So these are, but then true sadness, true grief, we kind of like learn about the value of things that we have and the value of things that we've had and we lost, but the ripple effect of having them, you know, like a grandmother that is no longer with us, that the love of that grandmother definitely still brightens our life. Without that love, we wouldn't be the person who we are today. So those unpleasant emotions are definitely helpful to understand the value of things around us, people around us. And like I said, there is a long list of unpleasant emotions. I promise this is probably the last one of unpleasant emotions that we are going to talk about tonight. Anger. Anger is basically something crossing your boundaries. That's why you get angry. That's why we get angry. Now, Carla McLaren says, anger tells me what I value, and when I or others have been wronged, it helps me protect and restore what's important. And Brené Brown says, anger is an emotion that we feel when something gets in the way of a desired outcome, or when we believe there is a violation of the way things should be. And this, you see that like both of them are talking about our own perception. You know, I get angry based on my own perception that what I wanted, you didn't give me. Now, whether the thing that I wanted was the right one thing or not, that's a different thing. That's why when we are angry, it's very important to go beyond my own wanting and put myself in the other person's shoes, and see it from a different angle, and then see also my own self to make sure that it's not just like from my limited point of view. We want to bring a bigger point of view to it. Yes, I want this. He didn't give it to me. Why didn't he give it to me? Didn't he have it? He had it, but he didn't want to give it to me. And why? You know, just go with those whys a few times just to see like what the other person really meant, and what you really wanted. And there are times that we get angry for a very good reason, and there are times that we get angry, and then when we think about it, we see that it was pointless to get angry about it. But don't repress your anger. Think about it, allow it to be there. But when we are angry, it doesn't mean that we also want to express it violently, or even aggressively, even in a sarcasm. We don't definitely want to express our anger by bringing shame to another person, because that's a vicious loop. That doesn't go anywhere. But when we think about our anger, when we try to process and when we try to see it from different standpoints, that's when we can have a constructive communication with the other person. But there are also times that the other person doesn't want to have a communication, which is very sad, but that's when we get frustration. Frustration comes from there. So you see how these emotions are all related and they transform to each other. And sometimes anger is behind a fear. Sometimes there is a fear behind an anger. It's very complex. That's why we want to focus on ourselves. I actually, thank you, Ashley. I do highly recommend journaling on your emotions. You know, even if you want to focus on your anger for a week. Did I get angry or did I not get angry? When I got angry, what was the reason? How could I bring more perspective to it? How did I answer? Was it a response? And then another week, think about another, focus on another emotion. But it definitely helps. When you focus on it, you get to know yourself better. And then you bring more mindfulness to it. That next time when you're angry, you are basically creating new neuron paths in your brain and your body that next time when you get angry, you will kind of like allow time to process the anger in a very different way. So there is one. Thank you, baby. Thank you. So yes, that was the last unpleasant emotion. Now, pleasant emotions. Happiness, we've all heard about it. It's actually like in America, everybody is pursuing happiness, right? But happiness is it's not a life goal. Happiness is like all other emotions. It comes and goes. We do want to feel happy, but we cannot be happy all the time. It's impossible in this lifestyle. Being human in this body, with everything going on in the nature and the world, it's not possible to be happy all the time. But when we are happy, we can be grateful for the happiness, but it's not something that we constantly pursue it. It's not a goal. It's exactly just like every other emotion. Carla McLaren says, happiness helps me look forward to the future with hope and delight. And Brene Brown says, I would define the state of happiness as feeling pleasure, often related to the immediate environment or current circumstances. So, if you want to think about it, happiness, when I'm, when I'm running towards my daughter, seeing her after 2 months, and when I hug her, it's like I'm happy. When I'm watching a good show that I like, I'm happy, but I'm also enjoying it. But the happiness is when I hug her, when I'm just watching the video, but the joy of it can stay with me for a much longer time. Now, joy, they say, joy helps me experience bliss and feel a sense of oneness with others and the world. And Brene Brown says, based on our research, I define joy as an intense feeling of deep spiritual connection, pleasure, and appreciation. Joy brings that connection and it stays with us. Even when you think about the memory, you still feel that joy. It can make you happy too, but that joy is much deeper. It's much more pleasant. Happiness is like a bubble, it bursts, but joy stays with us for a longer time. Now, I'm saying that that's how I feel. And apparently this is like how many people feel, but you still have to define it for yourself. When is it that I'm happy? What makes me happy? What brings me joy? So it's again, very important for you to know how it works for you. What else do we have here? Happiness, joy. And love. Is love an emotion? There are debates. There are so many discussions, even research studies, and honestly, no one knows. I like it when Brene Brown says that I leave it to the poets and writers, because it is like really their job to tell us what love is or to show us what love is. These are long definitions. I'm not going to read everything. It might be a little boring, but Carla McLaren thinks that love is not an emotion, because when we love, we experience all other emotions. When we love someone, we can be angry at them, we can be happy with them, we can feel the joy, we can feel frustrated with them. So she thinks love is this umbrella state of being that that includes all these different emotions. But Brene Brown thinks differently. She says love is an emotion based on things, her research and things that that she's heard from other people, that it's actually, she says, love is an emotion that we are capable of feeling in many different contexts. So because of that feeling, that it enables us of feeling something, Brene Brown thinks that it's an emotion. I think regardless, like I mentioned in the beginning of this workshop, love is the answer. In so many ways, everybody experiences love. And the more we feel the joy of loving someone and being loved, which is very survival for us. The connection, the loving connection is survival for all of human beings and other mammals. It's a very basic need for us to have the loving connection, to love and being loved. So that's all it matters. Now, how you feel the love, how you love others or other things, and how you want to be loved, it's our homework to figure that out, right? And it's worth it. It's definitely worth it. We talked about groups of emotions. Like if you want to use the example, Ashley was mentioning that she still feels happy about Christmas, but she also feels the grief and sadness of not having her grandmother with her. So at any moment, we can have so many different mixed feelings. Some of them are conflicting feelings that a lot of time when we have conflicting feelings, we focus on the unpleasant ones and then we start also feeling guilty about it. But if we bring all of it together and say, no, this is actually a concept that in this concept, I can have all these feelings. Different languages have different words for mix of feelings. Things that, like, I think in Swede people, they have a word for the joy of sitting at the table after dinner. You know, sometimes we just sit after dinner and talk and chit chat, you know, those dinner table discussions. They have actually a word for it. There are so many emotions in that. Or there's this word, I think I don't have it anymore here. There's this word that I think it's in German. I don't remember the word. It's a very long word, but it means in English, we translated a face that deserves a fist. So there are, you know, like, or I think in Japanese, they have a word of feeling bad about receiving a transactional gift, as if kind of like, I just wanted to make sure that I give you a gift because you gave me a gift, very transactional. They have a word for that, these complicated emotions. Lisa Barrett has this amazing example of having so many different conflicting emotions together. And that's her way of saying how we can actually create new words for it, for these new concepts, and teach our brain that this is a concept. This one that she offers is chipslessness. And that's when you feel, she's like, you are grabbing the last chip from the bag. You feel relieved that this is the last one I'm eating. You also feel disappointed that this is the last one you are eating. You also feel guilty that you ate the whole bag of chips. And you also feel the joy of having the whole bag of chips, you know. So it's so many different conflicting feelings, but when we bring it all together in a concept, then we deal with it very differently. When we have a word for it, there is more intelligence in it to express it, rather than just explaining all those different emotions and even not remembering all of them. I created immigrantness. The power of mixed emotions for an immigrant feeling safe and even relieved by not being in her motherland, while heartbroken, watching her country facing hardship and feeling helpless that she cannot stop the violence in her land. I mean, as an Iranian American, I can really say that this is a very powerful concept for me personally, and I'm sure a lot of other immigrants feel the same. With everything going on at the moment in Iran, it's really, really a strong combination of feelings that can really impact the daily mood, the daily life of an immigrant. But when I have it all in one word, then I don't feel guilty about that relieved part of it. I can say, oh, I see. This is natural that I feel like this. I feel this and this and this and this. It becomes more humane. It becomes more natural. That's how it helps. And I hope if you practice for yourself, it helps you the same way. Let me check the chat. We have a couple of them from Baby and Ashley. I have a general sense of emotion well-being since I have been writing in a gratitude journal. Yes, it actually, there are research studies that shows that the chemical of brain changes when we regularly write a gratitude journal. Yes, thank you for sharing that. Smart goals, yeah, definitely goals that actually are measurable and are evaluatable. You can evaluate them. I'm sorry about your entire immediate family, Debbie, that you lost them. Yes, and that grief, you know, it never goes away. We just find a way to deal with it. That's really important to know that a piece of us go with that loved one that goes away. But we just learn how to live with it and how to still try to get the best out of life. And Ashley says, feel bad. I know, Ashley, it does feel, sometimes you feel frustrated with yourself when you feel like, oh my God, how much do I want to feel this grief? But if you don't fight with it, if you allow it to be there, and if you kind of like nurture the grief and be kind to yourself, that like, I know my heart is still heavy, then that's when you start learning about how to deal with it in a constructive way. It is definitely hard during the holidays when you were used to be with them, losing them, you know, one after another one. Yes, it's definitely, it kind of like piles up, and it needs a lot more self-compassion, a lot more patience to kind of like bring love to it and allow yourself to learn to live in a different way now. Books are not coming to my mind at the moment, but there is a website, I think it's grief.com, that has a lot of really good resources that you can use. If I remember any books, I will definitely share it with you. Thank you. Thanks for sharing. All these comments are enriching our session. Thank you. So we did talk about, thanks to Bevi, she did talk about her personal examples of how we feel it in the body. We do feel emotions in our body, and each one of us feel it differently. Now, this is a picture of a study that they started, I think in Finland or in the Netherlands, they have been working on it for past 10 or 15 years, but it's still not, it's still very young. So the way that they are explaining it, like you feel happiness, like kind of like in all your body, or sadness is like this blue, almost all over your body. These are like very general and based on a very small data, based on the study. But just think about you know, like I said, it's kind of like with my hands when I have anxiety, when there is like something that I feel attacked, it definitely comes to my shoulder and neck, my stomach, you know, a lot of time in our chest. And pay attention, it's very subtle, but it can be even on your calf. It can be in any part of your body. But when you do a body scan, it helps you to find what part of your body is triggered with different emotions. And in a practice, I will talk about it, how you can do it. But you can, you know, kind of like do a body scan when you feel triggered or when you feel stressed with any unpleasant emotion, and see if like what part of your body is tense, what part of your body has a different temperature noticeable. Is it numb? Is it tingling? Is it like kind of like twisted? You know how if you feel that twisted gut, you know, or we say like, oh, I think it's like there is a washing machine working in my tummy. It's like when we have a lot of anxiety, but different people experience it differently. And do it when you are happy, do it when you feel joy, do it when you are content. See what parts of your body are relaxed and how you feel the connection with your life within your body. Our body is very smart, and our bodily intelligence can help us a lot. So that's a very important part that we are missing, because we've learned to live in our head, but we need to bring our body to the game and learn about our body and the messages that it has. The body language is actually very fascinating. We talked about naming it. Peter Levine, a very, very fascinating, amazing psychologist who actually talks about somatic awareness and has many good books about somatic awareness. He says, name it to tame it. And it's very important to use. These are, I'm not going to read them, but these are from different people who talk about how when we put a label or a name on our emotions, or even like bring a new concept to a mix of emotions that we have, how we can use that intelligence, the intelligence of using words, to communicate better. And research also shows that when we name an emotion, it kind of like brings a relief to us, because at least that kind of like ambiguity of what is it that I feel, you know, if I just feel like I feel so unpleasant, that doesn't give me any help. But if I say, oh, I'm actually feeling anxiety and I'm very scared of this, that brings a little relief and a little help us to know, to kind of like feel a little bit confident of what we want to do next, to know what the next step could be. And these two slides, this one and next one, this is the vocabulary. If you like to use, there are, you know, more comprehensive vocabularies of emotions in the web, in internet, you can search for. But this is just kind of like as part of this slide deck, I wanted to have it handy, that can help you to name your emotions. What is, definitely like being angry and frustrated are different, annoyed and frustrated are different, or feeling bitter is very different than feeling frustrated. So it's, these are different but subtle they are different, they're subtle differences. But when we pay attention to it, we see that we feel it in different parts of our body, and we sense it in our different parts of our body, and we feel it differently, and we can respond to it differently. And then grounding tools, in the next slide, I will talk about it, but these are suggestions of how you, when you feel stressed, when you feel that unpleasant emotion that come up, there are things that you can do in order to ground yourself, in order to calm your nerve system down, and then think about, bring the analysis part, bring the cognitive part to the equation to be able to have a better response. Wait. Oh, I think, no. Do I go back? I think by mistake I have deleted. No, hold on. I have, have I? Yeah, I have, by mistake, I have deleted one slide that was about emotional regulation, and it has a practice. I'm just going to talk about it quickly. So emotional regulation, when you, first of all, be very mindful of how you feel. Even if you want to set an alarm in your phone 5 times per day and check on yourself. How do I feel at the moment? What are different emotions are going on? So when you feel a little stressed and out of center, then try to name that emotion. You can even write it down if you want, or you can just do it on your like just your mind. Name the emotion, and then tell yourself, ask yourself, from 0 to 10, how anxious I am, how much anxiety am I feeling at the moment? And then how can I ground myself? How can I bring myself back to the center? What is a soothing practice that I can do? You know, in the case of feeling like all the pain in the shoulder, could it be just like, can I ground myself by just giving myself a little massage, a little hug? Or if you have time, can I just go for a nice walk? Can I just watch the birds a little bit? It depends on what works for you, but something soothing. And then when you feel a little calmer, that's when you can actually start practicing to come up with a response, to open your perspective. You know, when you're angry, then you're like, so why did this person lie to me? Why did this person not give this to me, even if he had it? So you can bring more perspective because you are calmer, your body is calmer. And then the more you repeat this process, the more habitual it becomes. It becomes a new habit. It becomes like, the more you do it, you are creating more neuron paths for this new habit, and you pay more attention to your emotions, to your bodily sensations, and you will be more mindful of it, and it will definitely lessen the overall irregulation of emotions. And when there is a regulation, when, you know, I feel anger and I just lash out, after that, you want to reflect. After that, you want to tell yourself, well, okay, I did that. This wasn't the right thing to do, but how could I do differently? What was involved? You know, do the reflection after. If you felt like, you know, someone said something and you hysterically started crying, or you lashed out, you know, we do that. And it's because it has become a pattern and a habit in our body. It happens so fast, in a fraction of a second, that we cannot control it at the moment. Like Ashley said, it controls us. But then do reflection after that. And slowly, when you name it, when you talk about it, when you write about it, when you try to ground yourself and be kind to yourself, that's when you can bring more regulation to your emotions. It will definitely work. It just needs constant practice for a while, and then it becomes second nature after a few months. And that's, in a different way, that's where a life coach can help, because what I do is I help my clients to kind of like be committed to their practices for these change of patterns. So basically that was the slide that I don't know why I mistakenly deleted. And this is the last slide that where we want to go from here. We want to have more emotional maturity. We want, because it calms us and it brings calmness to our environment. So the communication will be easier, will be deeper, there will be more love, and there will be more pleasant emotions. The unpleasant emotions wouldn't be always dominating. So it's very important when we recognize that we are stressed, that what the emotion is, and then we name it, and then we ground ourselves, and we try to understand and process it. I hope this was helpful. I would love to hear from you. This is these are more practices, actually. These are more practices if you like to do. And these are all my information in case if you like to contact me and if you have any question or anything. But is there any thoughts, any comments that you would like to share? Oh, I love that. If it's mentionable, it's manageable. Thank you.
I'd like to share something, if I may.
Yes, please.
Ravi, hi, from California. Thank you so much for this really wonderful workshop. I have noticed, I really liked your suggestion of setting an alarm. I have an Amazon Dot, so I right now have it set to remind me to move every hour. So, you know, it says move, move. So I get up and I dance for 5 minutes. But I really, really like the idea of setting it for emotions, to do kind of an emotional check-in, because a lot of times at the end of the day, I will have started my day feeling very positive or, you know, joyful, and I'll end the day on a kind of like a pall has set over the day or on a negative note. And I don't know when that happened. And I shared in the chat that I do something called the worry tree. When I have big things that I worry about, I set time aside, you know, to just worry about that and to go through all the negative things and possible solutions. And for me, finances are difficult now. And once I do that, I don't feel so scary, because that fear, that financial fear, isn't amorphous anymore. It's very concrete. But I don't know, sometimes emotions, negative emotions, just sneak up on me. And I like the idea of checking in throughout the day, because you can see the progression. It could be something very simple, like a bad lunch or something, you know. So thank you very much. I really liked I do grounding techniques, and I liked your list, and I liked your list of emotions. Thank you very, very much.
Of course. Thanks for sharing your experience and your personal stories with us. That's really priceless. Thank you. And yeah, you know, you mentioned that, like, I don't even know how everything changed. That's our interoception system. It's kind of like below our awareness, and it takes the messages from the environment and brings it in, and then kind of like gives it to our nerve system. But how it works is because it's below our awareness. Let's say, like, if I have a cat phobia and I just step in your house, I don't even see your cat, but below my awareness, my nose smells the cat without even me knowing it. I mean, cognitively, I don't know it, but my nose smells it and sends messages to my nerve system that there is a cat around, be scared. I don't even know how, what happened? Why do I feel like this? So a lot of it is below our awareness. But when you check yourself, when you bring yourself back, those grounding practices, even check in, even naming it, it helps really to bring a little bit more resilience to the whole process. So little things cannot, the little wind cannot just bend us, cannot break us. It can bend us, but then we come back. But thank you so much. Anybody else likes to join and share any thoughts? I think I'm gonna stop sharing. Well, thank you. I don't know if we have, Adrian, can we hear you or? All right. Okay, well, thank you so much, everybody. Oh, sorry that I have this light, but it's not much. Sorry about that. But thank you. And I hope you all take care of yourself, and hopefully we see you next month. Adrian, I will send you the slides. Thank you so much, Adrian. Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.